Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are wrapping up the end of our first week of my pantry and freezer challenge, and it has been so fun. I can't tell you how much peace it brings me not having to think about going to the grocery store. I said in the first video introducing this challenge that I would likely go back to the store mid-month and get some more fresh produce, fruit, possibly even some dairy like coffee creamer. But I'm not going to end up having to do that. My kids have put in a request for bananas, so I may send my husband to the store for bananas. But listen, I wanted to clarify, this challenge is not about survival. Like, my family could survive for many months without going to the grocery store. We have plenty of food in this house, and we have water. But that's not what this challenge was about. I wanted to make room in our freezer. I wanted to get through some things, vegetables and meats and stuff at the bottom of the freezer and the back of the freezer that we have forgotten about and never sees the light of day because it's been covered in stuff for who knows how long. I also wanted to get kind of a better picture of how much food in the pantry that we're going through on a regular basis. You'll see in just a minute when I take you through our meals from last week and also what the pantry looks like after the end of week 1. I'm really surprised at how little we go through in a whole week. We are a family of 10. We have 8 children. My mother-in-law lives on the property with us, so sometimes she joins us for dinner. And I'm just really pleasantly surprised with how little we've gone through in just the first week. I just made our first batch of bread yesterday. I made bread last night, and I'm gonna make some sandwich bread again today, but this has been the first time, and today is December 7th. All right, let's get into the meals and see how we did.
On December 1st, we made spaghetti and meatballs. We went through half of this 6-pound bag of beef meatballs, 1 jar of home canned roasted tomato sauce, and only 2 of those jars of Aldi marinara sauce. We used 3 pounds of thin spaghetti noodles. You can see my 7-year-old Annie breaking them up and putting them in the water for me. That's more than we usually use for spaghetti night for our family, but I wanted to have leftovers on purpose so that my children that go to school would have enough to pack in their thermoses the next day. I knew they would be thrilled about that. Thankfully, my plan worked, and they were able to take spaghetti and meatballs for lunch the next day. On the 2nd, we had creamy salsa chicken in the Instant Pot. This is one of my family's favorite recipes. It's easy to bulk up and add more ingredients. My kids had friends over this night because we had to go back to school for a program, so I put 4 chicken breasts in the Instant Pot instead of my usual 2. Then I used pork and beans instead of our usual pinto beans or black beans. I probably, looking back, should have rinsed them because it made the dish a little bit sweeter than usual. Then a can of corn, salsa, and I actually added a jar of Rotel tomatoes as well. Right before I started the Instant Pot, I went ahead and mixed up some homemade taco seasoning. I don't really follow a recipe for this. I use about 2 tablespoons of chili powder, about 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder and garlic powder, about 1 teaspoon of cumin, probably 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of oregano, and about 1 teaspoon of paprika. I also add about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Mix it up and sprinkle it over the contents in the Instant Pot before you start it. Now, I was using my 10-quart Instant Pot and 4 frozen chicken breasts, so I set it for a full 30 minutes on high. When the Instant Pot was finished, we shredded up the chicken, mixed it all together, added a block of cream cheese to soften, we mixed that in, and then the children ate it on tortillas with sour cream and shredded cheese. I thought I would share my coffee addiction with you. We have an espresso machine, and I have double espresso pods delivered to my house every 3 weeks from Amazon. And I can tell you right now, if there comes a day when I don't have access to good coffee and cream, I would just quit coffee altogether and switch to hot tea. I would rather go without or just drink hot tea than have to stomach bad coffee with no creamer. All right, now that my coffee confession is out of the way and you know coffee is not part of this challenge, we'll move on to breakfast. We had cheese grits with sausage. I mixed the sausage in with the cheese grits. I used a full 8-ounce block of cheddar, but only 1/2 pound of sausage. Everyone loved it, except Charlie. He's in a bit of a picky stage. The twins wanted leftover salsa chicken with their lunches, so I happily obliged, and Annie and Charlie, my younger ones, had a meat and cheese roll-up with a tortilla, and everyone got a fruit cup and a little bitty piece of brownie that was left over. The 4th was a Friday night, pizza night in our house. We had half a bag of pepperoni left, the other half pound of sausage from the morning, a small onion from the pantry, some black olives, and this random can of sliced mushrooms that had been sitting in the pantry for at least the last year or two, a jar of traditional marinara sauce that we use for our pizza sauce. I also decided to pull some sliced peppers out of the freezer that were from the garden this past summer, and I sauteed them with the onions. I love adding fresh vegetables to our pizza whenever we can. I got all of the toppings chopped up and ready to go. I rolled out the dough, started with our sauce, then added mozzarella, and the toppings. We had a sausage pizza, a supreme, and a pepperoni. These were 3 of the best homemade pizzas that I have made in a long time. I don't know why, but they were extra delicious. All the kids were very excited. Since it was Friday night, I decided to make a dessert. I pulled out the last 2 quart jars of apple pie filling from the pantry, and I made an apple crisp. The one thing I didn't consider was that the apple pie filling is already very much sweetened, so the dessert ended up being much sweeter than I would have preferred. Thankfully, because this is a pantry challenge, we did not have any vanilla ice cream to serve with it, so we just had it as is. It was still good. The kids liked it. On Saturday, I did some food prepping. I made some low-carb, no-bake chocolate peanut butter cookies with unsweetened coconut. They are delicious. I defrosted several pounds of chicken from the freezer and cut it up into bite-sized pieces and dredged it in a cup of cornstarch. I had decided to surprise my kids and make their favorite homemade sweet and sour chicken. I didn't have any more inexpensive vegetable oil left to fry in, so I actually opened that tub of lard from the pantry. I've never fried with lard before, but I must say I was really impressed with how little grease spatter there was. For the fried rice, I scrambled a dozen eggs with some peas and carrots from the freezer. I made 10 cups of white rice in the Instant Pot and then mixed it all together and seasoned with garlic powder, a little sesame oil, and a lot of soy sauce. Now, I could have made homemade sweet and sour sauce. It's actually very easy to make. However, this is a pantry challenge and I have the sauces that I need in the pantry, so I decided to go ahead and use it. We ended up separating the chicken and fried rice into 2 foil pans, and we did one with sweet and sour sauce and one with General Tso's, which was a little more spicy. On Sunday for lunch, I made this Italian soup that calls for a ton of vegetables that you blend in with the broth in a blender, like a whole bag of okra, a whole bag of cauliflower, onion, peppers, tomato paste, tomato sauce, and then I used 1.5 pounds of lean ground turkey. The soup is so good and it made a ton. I have about 3/4 of a gallon of it in the fridge, and we'll eat on that for a couple days. For supper Monday night, we had broccoli cheese soup. We have a lot of frozen broccoli in the freezer, and I needed to use up more of this bacon before it goes bad in the fridge. I also whipped up some of my favorite simple white bread dough with the intention of splitting it in half and using half to make some dinner rolls for the soup and half to make a loaf of bread for tomorrow. While the dough was rising, I took in these straps on this hilarious Christmas jumper that my oldest daughter was wearing to a Christmas party after supper. My 14-year-old son was responsible for pulling the bread out of the oven, and I think he should have let it go for about 5 more minutes, but it was fully cooked. It just didn't really toast on top. All I got was this little 8-ounce cup of soup as I ran out the door to take my girls to their Christmas party. They looked adorable in their tacky Christmas jumpers. Now, let's take a quick peek in the freezers and pantry and see how things are looking for week 2. We still have a lot of broccoli, a lot of frozen cottage cheese, quite a bit of frozen fruit and berries, and that ricotta cheese container that's full of leftover lasagna filling. I put the extra low-carb, no-bake cookies in the freezer. We also have some pecan half, crumb topping for blueberry muffins, and a few jars of pesto. Even using several pounds of chicken last week and half a bag of meatballs, the freezer is still so full. We did pick up about a 30-pound bag of venison from the meat processor this week from a deer that my son shot back in November. We still have lots of vegetables, butter, and meat.
All right, guys, this last week we finished up some of the oats that were in the cabinet in the kitchen. So I'll be opening a new one today to try a homemade granola bar recipe. We opened a new peanut butter last week. We went through 2 jars of our favorite Asian sauces. I think one was a General Tso's and one was sweet and sour. We did not have to open another soy sauce when we had Chinese because we already had one that was still half full in the fridge. Please pardon my voice. I have my children's cold. I don't think we went through any pasta at all last week, so we'll definitely be having some this week. I need to use up some of this wild rice, so we'll probably add in some chicken and wild rice casserole and sauteed cabbage later this week. I'm really surprised at how little food we've gone through in 1 week. Nobody had any ramen last week. I don't think we've had to open a new applesauce yet. I should probably make some pumpkin muffins soon, although I have a whole bunch of really ripe bananas from my last grocery trip, so I'm going to need to use those probably today. We didn't use any cream of soup mixes last week or coconut milk, so some of that might be on the menu for this next week. We did go through 2 cans of black olives, one for veggie pizza and one for snacks in my kids' lunches. We went through 1 quart jar of home canned tomato sauce. And I pulled some chicken out of the freezer and pressure canned it because we have about 200 pounds of venison coming from the processor in the next week or so. We are actually probably going to end up utilizing some of our neighbor's freezer space because they have a ton. He owns some restaurants and they've offered up some space in some of their freezers. We do not have the space for that much venison, but it is a tremendous blessing that my husband and boys had a very successful hunt a few weeks ago. I did go through 1 can of tomato paste earlier in the week. We have not had pancakes or waffles yet in the last week. There is the box of Cheez-Its that I will use to make Chex Mix today so that the kids have an extra snack for either after school or to take in their lunch boxes. I think we are going to have chicken fettuccine alfredo this week with homemade noodles because I do not have any fettuccine or linguine noodles, and homemade pasta is absolutely amazing. We did go through a small bag of grits. We had cheese grits with sausage twice last week. It was so good. All right, I forgot to share some things that I had purchased right after Thanksgiving, so it was still November, for some Christmas baking. So these marshmallows are part of that. We're going to make some Rocky Road fudge, but we only have 2 packages of tortillas left from my last grocery trip in November. So we'll make tortillas once those are gone. I don't think we went through anything from over here last week. Those breadcrumbs back there are going to get used in the next week. I'm going to put meatloaf on the menu. And then we just have our winter squash bin, and there's the rice Chex that I will be using also to make the Chex Mix later today. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. There also were a handful of you that are going to be joining me this month with this challenge. Please let me know how it's going in the comments below. I would love to hear. I am really looking forward to planning our menu for this next week. Seeing what we used this week and what we still have so much of in the freezers has helped me get some ideas for next week. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified when I post more in the future. Thanks for watching.